The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Community Arts Center as Olivia Chen arranged the sheet music on the piano. Her slender fingers, once famous for their speed and precision, now moved with a different purpose. She wasn't preparing for a concert hall filled with thousands. She was setting up for Timmy, age 7, who still struggled to remember where Middle C was located. "Miss Chen, I forgot my practice book again," Timmy announced as he bounded into the room, his backpack hanging off one shoulder. Olivia smiled and pulled out a spare copy from her drawer. "That's the 3rd time this month, Timmy. Should we start keeping your book here instead?" This was her life now. Gentle reminders about practice books, encouraging small hands to form the correct positions, and celebrating when a student finally mastered Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star. It was a quiet existence, worlds away from her former life, and that was exactly how she wanted it. 15 years ago, Olivia had been someone else entirely. Back then, music magazines called her the next great hope of classical piano, and her calendar had been filled with international performances. She had played at Carnegie Hall at 19. By 23, she had performed with 3 major symphony orchestras. And then, at the height of her budding career, she had simply disappeared. The Arts Center where she now taught was a humble building on the edge of town, with peeling paint and outdated facilities, but it offered affordable music lessons to children who might otherwise never touch a piano. And that gave Olivia more satisfaction than she had expected when she first applied for the job 10 years ago. Miss Chen, Penny Zhang, the center's administrator, poked her head into the teaching room after Timmy's lesson ended. "Could you stay a bit late tomorrow? The board wants to discuss the spring schedule." Olivia nodded, tucking a strand of black hair behind her ear. "Sure, no problem." She had nowhere else to be, as usual. What Olivia didn't know was that Penny was lying. There was no board meeting. Instead, a conspiracy had been brewing for weeks, led by Penny and some of Olivia's most dedicated students. The next evening, Olivia walked into what she thought would be a small meeting room and found herself facing a makeshift stage area. Rows of chairs had been set up, and nearly all were filled with parents, students, and a few curious community members. A banner hung crookedly on the wall, "First Annual Student Teacher Showcase." Olivia froze in the doorway, her heart beginning to race. "Penny, what is this?" Penny appeared beside her with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry for the little white lie, but we knew you wouldn't come otherwise." "I don't understand," Olivia said, though she was beginning to, and the realization made her palms sweat. "It was Lisa's idea," Penny explained, gesturing toward a 12-year-old girl who had been taking lessons from Olivia for 3 years. "She said it wasn't fair that you only get to hear them play, but they never get to hear you." "I don't perform anymore," Olivia said flatly. "You know that. It's just us," Penny said softly. "Just the parents and kids. It's not a real concert, but to Olivia, it might as well have been Madison Square Garden." The small crowd, perhaps 30 people in total, seemed to expand in her vision until they became a sea of critical eyes. She felt her throat tighten. "I can't," she whispered. "Mom," Lisa called out, waving from the front row. "Miss Chen is here." Lisa's mother, Helen, approached with a warm smile. "There you are. Lisa has been talking about nothing else all week. She's so excited for everyone to hear her teacher play. She told us you're amazing." "I'm really not," Olivia began, but was cut off by the excited chatter of students who had spotted her. "Miss Chen, are you going to play the Moonlight Song?" asked 8-year-old Zoe. "I told my dad you could play with your eyes closed," bragged Daniel, a precocious 9-year-old. Their enthusiasm was like a wave, pushing Olivia further into the room when all she wanted was to retreat. The exit seemed miles away now. Penny sensed Olivia's discomfort and guided her to a chair near the makeshift stage. "The kids will go first," she said reassuringly. "Just enjoy their performances. No pressure." For the next hour, Olivia sat rigidly as her students performed pieces they had been practicing. Some played beautifully, others stumbled through simpler compositions. Parents applauded enthusiastically after each performance, regardless of quality. It was exactly the warm, supportive environment Olivia had tried to create in her teaching studio. As the last student finished, Penny stood up and addressed the room. "And now what you've all been waiting for. Please welcome our very own piano teacher extraordinaire, Miss Olivia Chen." The room erupted in applause. Olivia felt her chest constrict as if bound by invisible ropes. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had built her new life carefully, brick by brick, ensuring that it contained no stages, no spotlights, no expectations she couldn't meet. "I really don't perform anymore," she whispered desperately to Penny. "Just one piece," Penny pleaded. "These kids look up to you so much. They've been practicing for weeks to impress you tonight." Olivia looked out at the expectant faces. Lisa was leaning forward in her chair, eyes shining. Timmy was bouncing up and down, whispering loudly to his mother. Even the usually sullen teenager Raj was watching with interest. "One piece," Olivia finally said, her voice barely audible. She stood on legs that felt like they might give way at any moment and approached the upright piano. It wasn't much, just an old Yamaha that had seen better days, but it was the center's pride and joy, donated by a local business 5 years ago. Olivia sat down, adjusting the bench out of habit. The keys before her seemed to waver slightly, and she blinked hard to focus. She placed her hands on the cool ivory, noting absently that the piano needed tuning again. What should she play? Her mind raced through possibilities. Nothing too complex, she was out of practice for the difficult pieces. Nothing too simple. The parents expected their children's teacher to be proficient. She settled on Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece she had once played, as a warm-up before tackling more challenging works. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and for a terrible moment, she thought they wouldn't move at all. Then she began, tentatively at first. The opening notes were soft, questioning. There was a slight tremble in her left hand that probably only she could detect. The familiar melody began to take shape, and Olivia kept her eyes fixed on the keys, afraid to look up and see the audience's reaction. By the middle of the piece, something unexpected happened. The room around her seemed to fade, and it was just Olivia and the music, reconnecting like old friends who had been separated too long. Her fingers remembered what her conscious mind had tried to forget: the joy of creating something beautiful, the conversation between artist and instrument. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the room exploded with applause. Olivia looked up, startled, almost having forgotten where she was. The faces before her were lit with wonder. "That was beautiful," Helen said, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "Can you play something else?" Lisa called out. "Please?" Before Olivia could respond, more requests poured in. The anxiety that had momentarily receded came rushing back. One piece was manageable, a fluke, a concession. But more, that would be performing for real. "I think that's enough for tonight," Penny interjected, seeing the panic rising in Olivia's eyes. "Let's thank Miss Chen for sharing her talent with us." As the crowd dispersed, chattering excitedly about the performances, Olivia remained seated at the piano, trying to steady her breathing. She had survived, but barely, and judging by the gleam in Penny's eye as she approached, this wouldn't be the last time she'd be coerced into playing. "That was wonderful," Penny said, sitting down beside her. The parents were impressed. "I think you've inspired the kids to practice harder." "Don't ever do that to me again," Olivia said, but there was less anger in her voice than she intended. "Why did you stop performing?" Penny asked quietly. "You're incredible." Olivia stood up, closing the piano lid with a gentle thud. "That's a story for another time," she said. "I should go home." As she gathered her things and headed for the door, Olivia didn't notice 13-year-old Hero's father in the back row, holding up his phone. He had recorded the entire performance, captivated by the unexpected skill of his son's usually reserved piano teacher. "You should post that online," another parent suggested. "She's really good." "Maybe I will," Hero's father replied, watching as Olivia slipped out the door, unaware that her carefully constructed quiet life was about to change forever. Olivia woke the next morning feeling strangely unsettled. Her fingers tingled, as if remembering the sensation of dancing across piano keys after so many years of restraint. She flexed them absently as she made her morning tea, trying to push away thoughts of last night's impromptu performance. It was just one piece, she told her reflection in the kitchen window. Just a simple Debussy that any decent piano teacher could play. But deep down, she knew it hadn't been just that. For a brief moment, the music had taken her back to who she used to be. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Penny. "The parents can't stop talking about last night. Everyone loved your playing." Olivia set the phone down without replying. She had 4 lessons to teach today. and thinking about last night wouldn't help her focus on 7-year-old Timmy's struggle with hand positioning. When she arrived at the Arts Center, something felt different. The receptionist smiled at her more brightly than usual. A parent waiting in the lobby gave her a thumbs up. Even the usually bored teenagers hanging around after school seemed to pay attention when she walked by. "Miss Chen." Lisa bounded up to her before her first lesson. "You were amazing yesterday. Why didn't you tell us you could play like that?" Olivia managed a small smile. "Because I'm here to teach you to play, not to show off." "Speaking of which, did you practice your scales this week?" She tried to maintain normalcy throughout her teaching day, but comments about her performance kept interrupting the routine. Parents lingered after dropping off their children, asking casual questions about her musical background. By the afternoon, she felt drained from deflecting their curiosity. Her last student of the day was Hiro, a serious boy who showed genuine promise. As he settled at the piano, Olivia noticed he seemed distracted. "Everything okay, Hiro?" she asked. He looked at her with wide eyes. "My dad showed me the video." Olivia froze. "What video?" "From last night." "Of you playing?" "He posted it on YouTube." The room seemed to tilt around her. "He did what?" "It already has like 3,000 views." Hiro continued, oblivious to his teacher's distress. "He said you're better than the pianists he pays to see in concert." Olivia sank onto the bench beside Hiro, her heart hammering against her ribs. A video online, thousands of views. The carefully constructed walls around her past life were crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "Miss Chen, are you sick?" Hiro asked, concerned by her sudden pallor. She shook her head and forced herself to focus. "No, I'm fine. Let's work on your piece for next week." But her mind was elsewhere as Hiro played. How long before someone recognized her? How long before the questions started? The expectations? The pressure that had once crushed her under its weight? After Hiro left, Olivia sat alone in the practice room, hands trembling slightly as she searched for the video on her phone. It wasn't hard to find. Amazing Piano Teacher Surprise Performance had already climbed to 5,978 views in the few hours since Hiro's father had posted it. The shaky footage showed her at the upright piano, head bowed over the keys as she played Debussy. The audio quality was poor, the piano itself out of tune, but somehow that made it worse. Comments were already piling up beneath the video. "Who is she? She's incredible. This is why you should never judge a book by its cover. Hidden talent. That old piano doesn't deserve her fingers. Get this woman a concert grand." Olivia closed the app and took several deep breaths. It would blow over, she told herself. In a week, people would move on to the next viral sensation. All she had to do was lay low and wait it out. 3 days later, Olivia knew she had been wrong. The video hadn't blown over, it had exploded. Local news had picked up the story of the hidden virtuoso teaching children at a community arts center. Overnight, the view count had jumped to over 200,000. Someone had enhanced the audio quality and reposted it, and that version was approaching 500,000 views. Penny had been fielding calls all morning from parents wanting to enroll their children in lessons with Olivia. There was now a waiting list 50 names long. This could save the center, Penny told her during a rare quiet moment. The Arts Center had been struggling financially for years, always one grant rejection away from closing its doors. "We could raise tuition a tiny bit for your lessons, use the money to fix the roof, maybe even buy a new piano." Olivia understood the desperation in Penny's voice. The center did important work in the community, making arts education accessible to families who couldn't afford private lessons. But the thought of being the center's attraction, its star, made her feel physically ill. "I need to cancel my lessons today," she said suddenly. "I'm not feeling well." It wasn't entirely a lie. Her chest felt tight, her breathing shallow. The familiar symptoms were returning, the ones that had driven her from the stage all those years ago. At home, Olivia turned off her phone and pulled the blinds. She sat in the dimness of her living room, trying the breathing exercises her therapist had taught her long ago. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 7. Release for 8. Repeat. A knock at her door startled her out of the rhythm. She ignored it at first, but the knocking persisted. "Olivia, it's Penny. I know you're in there." With a sigh, Olivia opened the door. Penny stood on her porch looking apologetic. "I'm sorry to bother you at home," she said, "but something's happened and I thought you should know right away." "What now?" Olivia asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Someone recognized you in the video, a music professor from Juilliard. He left a comment with your full name and, well, people are looking you up now. They know who you were." Olivia leaned against the doorframe, suddenly lightheaded. "Come in," she managed to say. Once inside, Penny continued carefully. "The thing is, there's a man from the Symphony Society who came to the center looking for you. He said they're doing a benefit concert next month and they want you to play." "No," Olivia said automatically. "Absolutely not. He left his card," Penny said, placing it on the coffee table. "He said to tell you that Arthur Kleinman sends his regards." The name hit Olivia like a physical blow. Arthur Kleinman had been her mentor, the renowned pianist who had discovered her talent when she was just 11 years old. He had guided her career, opened doors for her, believed in her when no one else did. "Arthur is here? In town?" Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Penny nodded. "Apparently he's the guest conductor for the benefit concert." Olivia sank onto her couch, memories flooding back. Arthur's patient instruction, his gentle but firm critiques, the pride in his eyes when she had made her debut at Carnegie Hall. And then, his confusion and disappointment when she had walked away from it all without explanation. "I can't see him," she whispered. "He said if you said that, to tell you he'll be at Rosalind's cafe tomorrow at noon. Just to talk, no pressure, no pressure." How many times had Olivia heard those words, only to find herself crushed under mountains of expectation? But this was Arthur. She owed him at least an explanation after all these years. "I'll think about it," she said finally. After Penny left, Olivia found herself drawn to the old, upright piano in the corner of her living room. It had been a gift to herself when she moved to this small town, a compromise between abandoning music entirely and keeping it at a safe distance. She sat down and lifted the lid, revealing keys that were slightly yellowed with age. Unlike the piano at the center, this one was perfectly tuned, the one indulgence she allowed herself. Her fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. Then, almost of their own accord, they began to move. Not Debussy this time, but Rachmaninoff, Piano Concerto No. 2. It was the piece that had launched her career, the one that had made critics take notice of the young prodigy, with extraordinary technical skill and emotional depth. The opening chords resonated through her small living room, dark and powerful. As she played, Olivia felt the years melting away. Her fingers remembered every note, every nuance of the challenging piece. The music swelled around her, filling the space with its beauty and complexity. She had forgotten what it felt like to play without restraint, to let the music take her where it wanted to go. For 15 years, she had kept herself in check, playing simple pieces for teaching purposes only. Now the floodgates had opened and all the music she had suppressed came pouring out. When the final notes faded, Olivia was surprised to find tears streaming down her face. The piece had always moved her, but now it carried the weight of everything she had lost and left behind. Tomorrow, she would meet Arthur. She would explain to him why she couldn't perform again, make him understand the crippling anxiety that had nearly destroyed her once before. He would be disappointed, but he would accept her decision, and then perhaps life could return to normal. But as she closed the piano lid, a small voice inside her whispered that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The music had awakened something in her, something she had tried to bury for 15 years. And now that it was stirring, she wasn't sure if she could or even wanted to silence it again. Rosalind's cafe sat on the corner of Main Street, its large windows letting in streams of midday sunlight. Olivia arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from her concert days when being late was unforgivable. She chose a table in the back corner, facing the door so she could see Arthur when he arrived. The waitress brought her a cup of tea that she didn't touch. Her stomach was in knots, her mind racing through all the things she might say to explain her disappearance from the music world. How could she make Arthur understand that what had seemed like a promising career to everyone else had felt like a slowly tightening noose to her? At exactly noon, the cafe door opened and Arthur Kleinman walked in. He was older now, his hair completely silver, but he still had the same straight-backed posture and keen eyes that missed nothing. He spotted her immediately. "Olivia," he said, his voice warm with genuine pleasure as he approached her table. "It's been too long." She stood awkwardly, unsure whether to shake his hand or hug him. Arthur solved the dilemma by embracing her briefly. "You look well," he said, taking the seat across from her. "Teaching suits you." "How did you find me?" Olivia asked, skipping the small talk. Arthur smiled. A former student of mine sent me a video. You have to see this piano teacher, he said. I almost fell out of my chair when I realized it was you. The waitress came to take Arthur's order. Black coffee, no sugar, just as he had always taken it during their long rehearsal sessions years ago. So, Arthur said once they were alone again. 15 years of silence. And I find you teaching Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to children in a small-town art center. There was no judgment in his voice. Just curiosity. I'm happy here, Olivia said defensively. Are you? Arthur raised an eyebrow. Because the woman I saw playing Debussy in that video didn't look merely happy. She looked alive. Olivia looked down at her untouched tea. It was just one piece. One piece that's been viewed over 1 million times now, Arthur said. Did you know your video has been shared by the Classical Music Society? Or that 3 major music blogs have written pieces speculating about your identity? Olivia's head shot up. 1 million views? Arthur nodded. It seems the world hasn't forgotten Olivia Chen, even if she tried to forget herself. The conversation was interrupted by a notification sound from Arthur's phone. He glanced at it and chuckled. What is it? Olivia asked. Your fan club is growing, he said, turning the phone to show her a social media post. Someone had enhanced her video further, adding a professional-looking title. The Return of Olivia Chen. From prodigy to teacher to comeback queen. Olivia's chest tightened. This is exactly what I didn't want. Why? Arthur asked simply. You had such extraordinary talent, Olivia. You still do. Why hide it away? The question hung between them, demanding an answer she had never fully given anyone. Not her parents, who had been bewildered by her sudden retirement. Not her fellow musicians, who had whispered about breakdowns and burnout. Not even Arthur, who had called and written repeatedly until she stopped responding altogether. I couldn't breathe, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Every performance, every review, every new piece to master. It was like being slowly buried alive. The panic attacks started small just before walking on stage. Then they got worse. I'd be practicing and suddenly couldn't feel my fingers. My heart would race so fast I thought I was dying. Arthur's expression softened. Why didn't you tell me? What would I have said? That the career you helped build for me was killing me? That I wasn't strong enough to handle the pressure that comes with success? Olivia shook her head. It was easier to just disappear. And now? Arthur asked. That video suggests the music is still in you. Olivia sighed. Now I teach. I help children discover music without the crushing weight of expectation. It's enough. Arthur took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim of the cup. Is it? Because when I watch that video, I see a woman who has been denying a fundamental part of herself. Before Olivia could respond, a young woman approached their table tentatively. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but are you Olivia Chen, the pianist from the video? Olivia felt her face flush. Yes, I knew it. I'm such a fan of your work. I studied your recording of Chopin's ballads in music school. The woman fumbled in her purse and pulled out a napkin. Would you mind signing this? My professor won't believe I met you. Bewildered, Olivia scribbled her name on the napkin. Thank you so much, the woman gushed. Will you be performing again soon? I'd buy tickets in a heartbeat. I don't, Olivia began, but Arthur cut in smoothly. Ms. Chen is considering some select appearances. Nothing has been announced yet. After the woman left, Olivia glared at Arthur. Why did you say that? Because it's what she wanted to hear, he replied calmly. And because I'm hoping it might become true. Back at her apartment that evening, Olivia discovered that her phone had 27 missed calls and over 50 text messages. Former classmates from Juilliard, music journalists, concert promoters. Word had spread like wildfire, and everyone wanted a piece of the pianist who had vanished at the height of her promise. She scrolled through the messages in growing disbelief. There was even one from the director of the National Symphony Orchestra, asking if she would consider a guest appearance next season. A knock at her door provided a welcome distraction. It was Penny, looking both excited and apologetic. I take it you've seen the news? Penny asked as Olivia let her in. Some of it, Olivia replied. It's overwhelming. The center's phone has been ringing nonstop. 3 different TV stations want to interview you. And get this, we've received over $15,000 in donations since yesterday, All because of your video. Olivia sat down heavily on her couch. Donations? Penny nodded enthusiastically. People want to support the art center that rediscovered Olivia Chen. We can repair the roof, buy new instruments, maybe even expand our scholarship program for kids who can't afford lessons. The implications weren't lost on Olivia. Her sudden fame could save the struggling art center that had become her refuge. But at what cost to her own hard-won peace? I met with Arthur today, she said quietly. Your old teacher? How was it? Complicated. He wants me to perform at the Symphony Society benefit concert. Penny sat beside her. Are you going to do it? I don't know, Olivia admitted. The thought of being on stage again with all those eyes watching, judging, it makes me feel like I can't breathe. But you love playing, Penny said. I saw it that night at the showcase. For a moment you weren't our reserved piano teacher. You were transcendent. Olivia remembered that feeling. The brief window when the music had flowed through her without fear. But she also remembered what came after, the crushing anxiety that had driven her from the stage in the first place. I don't know if I can go back to that life, she said. Penny was quiet for a moment. Maybe you don't have to go back. Maybe there's a way forward that's different. Before Olivia could ask what she meant, her phone rang. It was Lisa's mother, Helen. Olivia, I'm so sorry to call you at home, but Lisa is having a meltdown about her recital piece, and I wondered if we could schedule an extra lesson this week. The normalcy of the request was jarring after the surreal events of the past few days. Of course, Olivia said. How about tomorrow after school? After ending the call, Olivia felt a small sense of relief. Despite everything, she was still a piano teacher with students who needed her. That at least hadn't changed. The next morning, Olivia woke to find a crowd of reporters outside the art center. They surged forward when she approached, microphones thrust toward her face. Ms. Chen, why did you quit performing? Will you be returning to the concert stage? What have you been doing for the past 15 years? Penny appeared at her side, acting as an impromptu bodyguard to usher her inside. Once safely behind closed doors, Olivia leaned against the wall, her heart racing. This is insane, she gasped. I know, Penny agreed, but it might be good for the center in the long run. Think of the publicity. Olivia shook her head. I can't teach with reporters camped outside. Actually, Penny said hesitantly, the board had an emergency meeting last night. They want to cancel regular lessons for a week and have you give a special masterclass instead. We could charge admission, use it as a fundraiser. You want me to perform? In front of an audience? Olivia felt the familiar tightness in her chest. Not perform, teach, Penny clarified. Share your expertise. People are curious about you, Olivia. Why not use that to help the center? Olivia was about to refuse when she noticed a small face peering around the corner. It was Zoe, one of her youngest students. Miss Chen, Zoe said shyly. Are you really famous? Olivia knelt down to meet the child at eye level. I used to play piano for lots of people a long time ago. Will you play for us again? Like at the showcase? The simple question cut through all the noise and complexity. Here was a child who just wanted to hear beautiful music with no expectations or judgments. Maybe, Olivia said softly. Would you like that? Zoe nodded enthusiastically. You play prettier than anyone. It makes me want to practice more. Penny gave Olivia a meaningful look over Zoe's head. Out of the mouths of babes, she murmured. As Zoe skipped away, Olivia stood up slowly. Perhaps there was a middle ground. Not the high-pressure world of international concerts, but not complete anonymity either. A way to share her gift without losing herself in the process. I'll think about the master class, she told Penny. But I need time to figure this out. Take all the time you need, Penny said. Though they both knew time was a luxury Olivia no longer had. The world had rediscovered Olivia Chen, and it wasn't going to forget her again so easily. A week after her meeting with Arthur, Olivia found herself standing before a packed room at the Arts Center. What had begun as a simple masterclass had evolved into something much bigger when news of the event spread online. People had traveled from neighboring towns just to see the viral piano teacher in person. The center's largest room had been transformed for the occasion. Chairs were arranged in neat rows. The old upright piano had been tuned and polished, and someone had even hung up fairy lights around the makeshift stage area. It looked almost magical and completely terrifying to Olivia. Through the door she could hear the murmur of the waiting crowd. There had to be at least 100 people crammed into the space. "I can't do this," she whispered to Penny, who stood beside her with a clipboard. "There are too many people." "It's not a performance," Penny reminded her gently. "You're just talking about music and maybe demonstrating a few techniques. Think of it as a big lesson." Olivia nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. She had prepared extensively, focusing on the educational aspects rather than treating it as a concert. She would explain the emotional architecture of Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece from the viral video. She would break down the technical challenges, demonstrate proper hand positions, discuss interpretation. It was teaching, not performing. Yet as Penny opened the door and led her in, the applause that greeted her felt anything but educational. It was the sound of an audience welcoming a performer, full of expectation and anticipation. Olivia forced herself to smile as she took her place by the piano. She had dressed simply in black pants and a blue blouse, teacher clothes, not concert attire. Her hair was pulled back in its usual practical style. These small choices helped ground her in her identity as an instructor, not a returning virtuoso. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "Today I'd like to talk about the piece many of you heard in the video, Debussy's Clair de Lune. It's a piece that many piano students encounter, but its apparent simplicity hides many challenges." As she spoke about the composition's history and structure, Olivia gradually relaxed. This was familiar territory, the analysis and deconstruction of music that she did every day with her students. The crowd listened attentively, and she began to feel that perhaps this wouldn't be so bad after all. Then a hand raised in the audience. "Could you play the whole piece for us before breaking it down? It would help us understand your points better." It was a reasonable request, exactly what any good teacher would do. But Olivia felt her chest tighten. Playing in front of 3 parents at a student showcase was one thing. Playing intentionally for a room full of people who had come specifically to hear her was entirely another. "Of course," she said, the words automatic even as panic began to build inside her. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. The room fell completely silent. She could feel every eye on her, waiting, expecting. Her fingers suddenly felt numb. The first notes came out stiff and mechanical. Wrong, all wrong. Not at all how she had played it at the showcase. She stopped, took a breath, and tried again. The second attempt was worse. Her hands were shaking now and sweat beaded on her forehead. The beautiful melody that had once flowed so naturally from her fingers now sounded disjointed and lifeless. "I'm sorry," she said, standing up abruptly. "I need a moment." She hurried from the room, ignoring the confused murmurs behind her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. It was happening again, the same paralyzing fear that had driven her from the concert stage 15 years ago. Penny followed her out, concern etched on her face. "Olivia, what's wrong?" "I can't play," Olivia gasped. "I thought I could, but I can't." "You played beautifully at the showcase." "That was different. I wasn't trying then. There weren't expectations." She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. "They're waiting for the Olivia Chen from the video, and I can't be her right now." Penny sat beside her, not speaking for a long moment. "Maybe," she said finally. "You need to tell them that." Olivia looked up, confused. "Tell them what?" "The truth. About why you stopped performing, about the anxiety." The suggestion was so unexpected that it momentarily cut through Olivia's panic. "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because." Olivia struggled to articulate the fear that had defined her life for so long. "Because it's admitting failure. It's showing weakness." Penny shook her head. "It's showing humanity, Olivia. And maybe it's exactly what your students need to hear." Olivia thought about Lisa, who got so nervous before recitals that she made herself sick. About Hero, who played perfectly in lessons but froze up in front of an audience. About all the children who berated themselves for mistakes and feared judgment. What message had she been sending them by hiding her own struggles? After a long moment, she nodded slowly. "Okay. When she walked back into the room, the crowd fell silent again. She didn't return to the piano bench. Instead, she stood in front of it, facing the audience directly. "I owe you all an explanation," she began, her voice quiet but clear. 15 years ago, I was a concert pianist. I played at Carnegie Hall with major orchestras in venues across the world. And then I disappeared from the music scene without explanation. She paused, gathering her courage to speak words she had never said aloud to anyone except Arthur. "I left because I developed severe performance anxiety. Panic attacks that made it impossible to perform. The pressure of perfection became too much, the critics, the audiences, the constant travel and demands. Music had been my greatest joy, but it became my greatest source of fear." The room was completely still now, every face focused on her. That night at the student showcase, when someone recorded me playing, was the first time in 15 years that I played in front of people without feeling that paralyzing fear. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just sharing music I love with children I care about and their families. She gestured to the piano behind her. "And today, when I tried to play for you all, the fear came rushing back. The same anxiety that drove me from the stage all those years ago." Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm telling you this because I want my students to know that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to struggle with something you love. What matters is that you don't let that fear steal your joy completely, as I almost did." She hadn't planned to say more, but looking at the faces before her, especially those of her students scattered throughout the crowd, she felt compelled to continue. "For years, I thought I had two choices: perform and suffer, or never play meaningful music again. But teaching has shown me there's another path. I can share my love of music without the pressure of perfection. I can help others find their own relationship with music, one that hopefully doesn't include the fear that consumed me." The silence that followed her words was different from before, not expectant or demanding, but thoughtful and somehow warmer. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to applaud. Others joined in until the whole room was filled with the sound. It wasn't the polite applause of a concert audience appreciating technical skill. It was something more personal, more genuine, acknowledgement of a shared human experience. When the applause died down, a woman near the front raised her hand. "I've had social anxiety all my life," she said. "Hearing someone as talented as you talk openly about your struggles helps me feel less alone. Thank you." Others began to share their own experiences. A doctor who had panic attacks before surgeries, a teacher who still got nervous speaking in front of classes after 20 years, a teenage boy who loved basketball but threw up before every game from nerves. As Olivia listened to their stories, something shifted inside her. The shame that had colored her relationship with music for so long began to recede, replaced by a sense of connection. Her failure had somehow created a bridge between her and these strangers. Lisa, her 12-year-old student, raised her hand next. "Miss Chen," she said, her voice small but determined, "if you get scared playing in front of people too, then maybe I don't have to be perfect at my recital next month?" Olivia smiled, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "No one is perfect, Lisa. Not even the teachers." She turned back to the piano and sat down again. This time, when she placed her fingers on the keys, she didn't think about the audience or their expectations. She thought about Lisa and Hero and Timmy and Zoe. She thought about all the students who would come after them, carrying their own fears and dreams. "This is Claire de Lune," she said simply, "and I'm going to play it as best I can today. It won't be perfect, and that's okay." The opening notes were hesitant at first, but as she continued, they grew stronger. This wasn't the flawless performance of a concert pianist at the height of her career. It was something more honest, the playing of someone who had fought her way back to the music she loved, scars and all. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. Olivia looked up to see Arthur standing at the back of the room, a gentle smile on his face. He gave her a small nod that contained volumes of understanding. For the first time in 15 years, Olivia felt like she could breathe freely again. The fear hadn't disappeared entirely. She suspected it never would, but it no longer held the power to silence her. As the master class continued, she found herself able to play short passages to demonstrate techniques, something she wouldn't have thought possible an hour before. Each small victory over her anxiety felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that had been lost. By the end of the session, when students and community members crowded around to ask questions and share their own musical journeys, Olivia realized that Penny had been right. There was a way forward that was neither a return to her past life nor a complete denial of her gifts. She just hadn't been able to see it until now. 2 weeks after the master class, Olivia sat in Arthur's office at the Symphony Hall, staring at the paperwork in front of her. The benefit concert for the Arts Center was scheduled for Saturday evening, just 3 days away, and her name was on the program. "I still don't think this is a good idea," she said, tapping her finger nervously on the arm of her chair. Arthur leaned forward, his expression kind but firm. "You've been practicing every day. The rehearsal with the orchestra went well. You're ready, Olivia?" She wasn't so sure. The master class had been a breakthrough, yes. Talking openly about her anxiety had lifted a weight she'd carried for 15 years, but playing a few passages to demonstrate techniques to a supportive crowd was very different from performing a full concerto with an orchestra in a sold-out concert hall. "What if it happens again?" she asked quietly. "What if I freeze up on stage?" "Then we'll handle it," Arthur said simply. "But I don't think you will. You're not the same person you were 15 years ago, and this isn't the same situation." He was right about that, at least. This time, she wasn't a young prodigy with the weight of impossible expectations on her shoulders. She was a teacher who had found her way back to music through helping others. And this concert wasn't about launching a career or impressing critics. It was about saving the Arts Center that had become her home. The center needed this fundraiser desperately. A structural inspection had revealed that the roof damage was worse than they'd thought, and without significant repairs before winter, they might have to close entirely. When Arthur had suggested a benefit concert featuring Olivia as the soloist, the board had jumped at the idea. "We've already sold every ticket," Arthur reminded her. "People are excited to hear you play." Olivia nodded, though her stomach clenched at the thought. "I should get back to the center. I have lessons this afternoon." As she drove from the Symphony Hall to the Arts Center, Olivia tried to focus on the positive changes of the past few weeks. Her viral fame had brought unexpected benefits. Enrollment in piano lessons had doubled. Donations had poured in from music lovers touched by her story. And most surprisingly, her openness about her anxiety had transformed her teaching. Students who had always hidden their nervousness now talked freely about their fears. Together, they were developing strategies to manage performance anxiety, breathing techniques, visualization exercises, reframing negative thoughts. Olivia found herself sharing the tools her therapist had given her years ago. Tools she had never fully embraced until now. When she arrived at the center, Lisa was waiting for her first lesson of the day. "Miss Chen," Lisa called out, waving a piece of sheet music. "I've been practicing the piece you gave me all week. Even when I mess up, I just keep going like you taught me." Olivia smiled as they walked to the practice room together. "That's exactly right. Mistakes are part of music, not the end of it." The lesson went well, with Lisa showing remarkable progress on a challenging Chopin piece. As they finished, Lisa lingered by the piano. "Are you nervous about the big concert?" she asked. Olivia considered giving a reassuring teacher answer, then decided on honesty instead. "Yes, very nervous, but also a little excited," Lisa nodded seriously. "We're all coming to watch you. Me, Hero, Zoe, Timmy, all your students. We made something for you, but it's a surprise for Saturday." Curious as she was, Olivia didn't press for details. The rest of her teaching day passed in a blur of lessons, each student mentioning the upcoming concert with excitement. Their confidence in her was touching and terrifying. She didn't want to let them down. That evening she practiced at home, working through the Rachmaninoff concerto she would perform on Saturday. Her fingers moved confidently over the keys, muscle memory intact despite the years away from the piece. But would that memory hold when she was on stage under the lights with hundreds of eyes watching her? Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Backstage at the Symphony Hall, Olivia peeked through the curtains at the packed auditorium. The benefit had drawn a larger crowd than anyone had expected. Prominent community members, music lovers from across the state, even a few critics from music magazines who had heard about the comeback of Olivia Chen. In the front rows, She could see her students and their families, dressed in their best clothes for the special occasion. Penny was there too, looking uncharacteristically elegant in a dark blue dress. Arthur appeared at her side in his conductor's tuxedo. "How are you feeling?" "Like I might throw up," Olivia admitted. He chuckled. "That's normal. Even after 40 years of performing, I still get butterflies." "These aren't butterflies," Olivia muttered. "These are angry bats." A stagehand approached to let them know they had 5 minutes until the concert began. Arthur squeezed Olivia's shoulder reassuringly before going to greet the orchestra. Alone again, Olivia closed her eyes and tried the breathing exercise she had practiced with her students. 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. Repeat. It helped, but only slightly. Her heart still raced, her palms still sweated. "Miss Chen?" She opened her eyes to find Hero standing before her, looking small and out of place backstage. "Hero, you shouldn't be back here." "I know," he said. "But Lisa said I had to give you this before you went on stage." He thrust a large envelope into her hands. "It's from all of us." Before she could respond, he darted away, presumably returning to his seat in the audience. Olivia opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a handmade card decorated with musical notes and tiny handprints. The message, written in different handwritings, read, "We believe in you, Miss Chen. You taught us that perfect isn't important, but trying is. We're trying because of you." Below the message were signatures from all her students. More than 20 names, from Timmy's wobbly letters to Zoe's careful cursive to Lisa's bold scrawl. Some had added small drawings or personal notes. "Your playing makes me want to practice. Thank you for teaching me. You're the best piano teacher ever." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she read each message. These children, with their unguarded hearts and genuine admiration, had given her something her years of critical acclaim never had. The feeling that her music mattered not because it was perfect, but because it connected people. She was still holding the card when Arthur returned. "Time to go on," he said gently. She nodded, carefully placing the card on top of her purse. "I'm ready." As she walked onto the stage, the applause was thunderous. She bowed briefly, then took her place at the gleaming grand piano. Arthur raised his baton, the orchestra tensed in readiness, and then they were off. The dramatic opening chords of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filling the hall. For the first few minutes, Olivia played well, if cautiously. She focused on the notes, on the technical aspects of the piece, on watching Arthur's conducting. But as the first movement progressed, she felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the slight numbness in her fingers that had always preceded her panic attacks. No, not now. Not when they were all watching, believing in her. She tried to push through, but her fingers stumbled over a passage she had played perfectly in rehearsal. Then another mistake followed, and another. The orchestra continued, professional enough to adjust to her faltering tempo, but Olivia could feel herself starting to spiral. The music on the page blurred before her eyes. Her breathing became shallow. This was exactly what she had feared. A public collapse. A confirmation that she didn't belong on this stage. Just as she was about to signal to Arthur that she couldn't continue, a movement in the front row caught her eye. Lisa had stood up from her seat and was making a gesture with her hands. The same breathing pattern Olivia had taught her for managing nerves before a recital. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. Beside Lisa, Zoe stood up too, making the same gesture. Then Hero, then Timmy. One by one, all her students rose from their seats, silently reminding her to breathe. The sight was so unexpected, so touching, that Olivia found herself following their lead almost without thinking. She took a deep breath as her fingers continued to move across the keys. The tightness in her chest began to ease slightly. Then something even more extraordinary happened. Lisa climbed the steps at the side of the stage and walked calmly to the piano. Before anyone could stop her, she sat down beside Olivia on the bench and began to play a simple accompaniment to the complex piece. Just the basic chords, the kind of simplified version Olivia had taught her students to understand the structure of classical pieces. For a moment, the orchestra faltered, unsure how to respond to this unprecedented interruption. Arthur turned in surprise, but instead of stopping the performance, he smiled and adjusted his conducting to include this unexpected addition. Encouraged by Lisa's boldness, Hero came next, bringing his violin. He stood beside the piano and began to play along. Not the full orchestral part, but a simplified melody that complemented the piano. One by one, Olivia's students joined her on stage, some with instruments, others simply standing near her in silent support. Zoe placed her small hand on Olivia's shoulder as she played. Timmy sat on the floor by the piano pedals, nodding his head in time with the music. It should have been chaos. It should have been a disaster. Instead, it became something entirely new. A piece of music shaped not by a single virtuoso performance but by a community supporting each other. Olivia felt the panic receding, replaced by a different emotion altogether, joy. Not the nervous exhilaration of her prodigy days, but something deeper and more sustainable. She wasn't playing to prove her worth or to meet impossible standards of perfection. She was playing with and for these children who had taught her as much as she had taught them. The audience, after an initial murmur of confusion, fell silent in wonder at the scene unfolding before them. This wasn't the program they had expected, but it was something far more powerful, a visual and musical representation of how art is meant to connect people rather than isolate them. As the piece reached its conclusion, the final chords resonated through the hall. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, unlike anything Olivia had experienced in her career. It wasn't just applause for technical brilliance. It was recognition of something authentically human that had transpired on that stage. Arthur was beaming as he turned to acknowledge both his orchestra and the unconventional group of young musicians who had joined them. Penny was in the front row, tears streaming down her face as she applauded. As Olivia stood to take a bow surrounded by her students, she felt a sense of coming full circle. 15 years ago, she had walked away from music because the pressure to be perfect had become unbearable. Today, she had found her way back through imperfection, through vulnerability, through community, through teaching others that music belonged to everyone, not just to those who could play without mistakes. The Arts Center was saved that night, raising more money than anyone had dared to hope. But something else was saved too. Olivia's relationship with music transformed from a source of anxiety into a source of connection. As she looked out at the standing crowd, at Arthur's proud smile, at her students' beaming faces, Olivia knew that she would never again have to choose between teaching and playing. She had found a third path, one where music wasn't about perfection or performance, but about bringing people together in moments of shared humanity, and that, she realized, was worth all the applause in the world.